Can you tell the difference between these two computers? One has the old HP logo and one has the new one. One has a Core 2 Quad and one has a Core i5. One has no optical drives and one has two. Otherwise, they're mostly identical. Well, I guess on this one the Windows 7 sticker is a little bit bigger. But otherwise, those are all the differences I can spot. They both have a card reader, which supports XD, microSD, SD, MMC, microSD, compact flash 1 and 2, and memory stick, and an additional USB 2.0 port. Power button, hard drive and power lights, microphone and headphone jack, and only headphone jack, and 4 more USB 2.0 ports. Here's a close-up of the card reader on one computer and the other. I know cable management under my desk is really bad. I'm sorry about that. The older one is an HP Compaq 6000 Pro, and the new one is an HP Compaq Pro 6300. Yes, one is called 6000 Pro and the other one is called Pro 6300. And don't you dare mix them up or Hewlett-Packard will come get you. And they are considered microtowers, which I guess they are pretty small for tower computers. They're also available in a small form factor desktop size. The 6000 originally did have an optical drive, but I moved it over to this one, even though I don't really have a purpose for two optical drives on the same computer. They're both DVD-RW drives, but the one on the bottom supports LightScribe. I don't have any LightScribe disks to test that feature. Here's a close-up of the stickers, Core 2 Quad and Core i5. And they both have the HP Compaq branding. Here's the back of these computers. They have a power supply at the top, and the built-in ports are line in, line out, PS2 mouse and keyboard, serial port, VGA port, display port. But the 6000 has 6 USB 2.0 ports. I plugged in this little wireless adapter on one of the ports. The 6300 has 4 USB 3.0 ports and 2 USB 2.0 ports. Also an Ethernet port on both of them, and 4 expansion slots. The 6300 has a dedicated graphics card. I'll talk more about that later. But you can see it also has a full-size display port and a DVI port. Let's see what's inside. We'll start with the older one, the 6000. Just loosen these two thumb screws and then pull out the cover. Maybe it's a bit dark in here, so I'll turn on an extra light. And here it is. The power supply is by HP. It has a maximum output of 320 watts. On the motherboard there are 4 RAM slots. 3 slots are occupied here. And the 4 expansion slots, 2 of them are PCI Express x1. One is PCI Express x16 for a graphics card, and the last one is regular PCI. I installed the hard drive on there myself. This little laptop hard drive, which is not mounted correctly, but it also has the space for another drive. And over here, you could put 2 5.25-inch drives. This motherboard does not support IDE or floppy controller, so I cannot install a traditional floppy drive in it. This computer also has a built-in speaker. It's mono and doesn't have a lot of bass, but it sounds pretty good, and it gets quite loud. Just made room for the 6300, which has the new HP logo. Have to loosen the thumb screws here. And this one looks about the same inside, except it has a few more components installed. The power supply is also 320 watts. All 4 RAM slots are populated here. There are 2 drives installed, a regular hard drive and a solid-state drive with an adapter to correctly fit in this 3.5-inch bay. Also has the speaker. And in the PCI Express x16 slot, There's an NVIDIA Quadro K600 graphics card. Pretty small and doesn't require extra power from the power supply, which is good because this power supply does not have an extra connector. And the thing I love about this computer is that to install something in the expansion slots, you don't need screws. Just open this, and then you can install or remove things here, including the blanking plates, and then you just close this to lock them. No need for screws. There's also this nice illustration about how to remove several components, like the front panel, drives, expansion cards as I showed, and the CPU cooling fan. It's a bit difficult to see, but this 6000 was manufactured on March 6th, 2010. The 6300 has more or less the same illustrations. And it was manufactured on August 25th, 2012. These thumb screws make a funny sound when tightening them. Sadly, the 6300 only has USB 3.0 ports on the back. The ones on the front are only USB 2. And because I sometimes want to plug in a USB 3 external hard drive, I just have this short USB 3 cable always plugged in. And when I need to connect a hard drive or something with this USB 3 port, I can do it without always having to reach the back of the computer. So now let's turn these computers on. Of course, we'll start with the 6000. I pressed F10 to enter the BIOS setup. It asks for language. Let's do English. And here it is. Here's the system information. We can see that this computer has an Intel Core 2 Quad Q8400 at 2.66 GHz, which is not the highest end Core 2 Quad, but it is pretty good. It has 4 GB of DDR3 RAM, 2 sticks with 1 GB, and 1 stick with 2 GB. That 2 GB stick must have been added later. This computer can be upgraded up to 16 GB of memory, but I'm not sure it's really worth it on a computer of this age. 4 gigs is enough, maybe 8 gigs is a significant improvement, but 16 might be wasted, depending on what you want to do on a computer like this. It doesn't mention the BIOS date here, but I updated the BIOS on here. Of course, due to the age of this computer, it doesn't support EFI. And the only SATA device that's installed here is my 80 GB test hard drive. So now let's boot to it. And as you might have been able to tell from the lack of devices installed in this computer doesn't really have a specific purpose yet. I'm just using it for testing. And the latest OS I tried out on this computer is Linux Mint, the latest version 20.3 with the Cinnamon desktop environment. I could have installed the lighter XFCE version, but this one runs okay. It's quite slow, but only because of the hard drive. If I installed an SSD, it would boot up in less than a minute. So let's check out the system info. And let's see if we can check the BIOS state using Linux. I've never done that actually. I know how to do it in Windows. You just run msinfo32, but in Windows I have no idea. System reports, there it is. So system information, there's the date of the BIOS, October 19th, 2015. Yeah, whatever, too much information here. And just for fun, I decided to install Kden Live on it from the software manager. And if I hook up my external hard drive, which has my video projects in it, I've already started editing this video. So if we open the project, it takes a while to load, but it eventually works. And I can keep editing the video here if I want. With this USB 3 port, I can do it without always having to reach the back of the computer. The preview is a little laggy, but it's totally usable. However, I won't be using this computer for video editing. Let's shut this down and check out the 6300. On this one, I pressed escape to enter the startup menu. We'll enter the computer setup. And it looks about the same as the older computer, but I believe it's running in graphics mode instead of text mode. It has a Core i5-3470 at 3.2 GHz. It's a quad-core CPU without hyperthreading, much like the Core 2 Quad. It has 4 2GB sticks for a total of 8 GB. And this computer can be upgraded up to 32 GB of memory. But again, more than 16 is probably not worth it on a computer like this. And I also updated the BIOS to the latest version, which is from around 2019, I believe, even though it says 2016 and 2015 at the bottom. This one is fully populated in the SATA department. Although I don't understand why the last one is SATA 4 instead of SATA 3, since it starts from 0. Anyway, there's the SSD, hard drive, and 2 optical drives. The SSD is a Micron real SSD, as opposed to those fake SSDs, which was original to this computer. The 500 gig hard drive is a 7200 RPM Seagate Barracuda. And this computer also supports booting from EFI, so that's what I have. I disabled legacy boot sources, but I left legacy support enabled for a reason you'll see in a moment. And of course, secure boot is disabled. So now let's start it up. And here we have the Open Core menu. That means I installed macOS on this computer. But we'll save the best for last and check out the other operating systems I have installed here. We'll start with Ubuntu. Since it's installed on the SSD, it starts up pretty quickly. We can look at the system info again. And here's one thing that surprised me. This computer is actually more powerful than my main computer, my ThinkPad T440s with 4th generation Core i7. It's not too surprising, but if you think of a 3rd generation Core i5 and a 4th generation Core i7, the latter obviously seems more powerful. But it's not, because this is a desktop CPU. It runs quite cool. I didn't have to change the thermal grease on this computer. The maximum temperature on this computer right now is 36 degrees Celsius. Under heavy load, it goes up to about 50. I don't think I've seen it go above 50. The GPU heats up to about 70 degrees under load, but that's still not dangerously high. So it runs cool enough, and I like that it's more powerful than my main computer. And I could even upgrade the CPU to an i7-3770, which is still a quad core, but it has hyperthreading, so 8 threads, and that will be even more powerful. But with that in mind, I started using this computer for video editing. And even though I've been using iMovie to edit my videos for years, I recently started getting used to Kdenlive, so that's what I'm using on this computer. I installed it from the Ubuntu Software Center, which distributes apps using the Snap format, which many people do not like, but I've had no problems with it. And maybe it's not the latest version, 21.08, but when I first installed Kdenlive using regular Debian packages, it installed an even older version, so this one is good enough. And I had a problem with it, where if I save a project to a certain folder, it creates a hidden file with some garbage characters. I think that's a problem with Snap packages. But all I have to do is close the program, rename the file to have the correct name and extension, and then reopen it, and the Snap app will work with it just fine. So that's a weird workaround, but besides that, I haven't had any other problems with Snap programs. I'm not a fan of it, but I don't hate it either. While we're here, we could try out the speaker. Let's see, do I have any royalty-free music on here? Yes, I do. And it gets quite loud, so that's not bad for a speaker built into a tower computer. And if you're into that sort of thing, here's NeoFetch. So that's Ubuntu. Now let's check out Windows. And here I have Windows 11 and Windows 7. We'll start with Windows 7 because that's the other operating system installed on the SSD. And you might think, why Windows 7? Why not Windows 10? It's out of support, as you can see. Yeah, I know, but my main PC has Windows 10 and I don't really want to deal with Windows 10 on this computer. So I installed the OS it was originally designed with. Any particularly important stuff is done from the updated Ubuntu installation. So let's see the system info. This computer has a Windows Experience score of 6.8. Processor is 7.5, RAM is 7.6, graphics and gaming graphics are 6.8, and the SSD is maxed out at 7.9, which is not too bad. It's pointless to install Windows 7 on a computer much newer than this, and now that it's been unsupported for 2 years, it's not really a good idea to install it as your main operating system. But since my main computer does have an updated and supported operating system, and this is an older computer, I wanted to try the older OS in here. The Windows Experience Index isn't a really good benchmark, so I ran the PassMark PerformanceTest benchmark, which really shows how this computer is more powerful than my main one. I used PassMark PerformanceTest version 9, even though there's version 10 now, because version 10 was crashing in some tests, not sure why. You can read all the scores here. This Quadro graphics card is not really designed for video games, but I did try some out. In many cases, it does perform better than my laptop with NVIDIA GeForce A20M graphics. It only has 1GB of dedicated video RAM, unlike my A20M, which has got 2. So it's not a very high-end video card, but it performs acceptably. Here we can open system information to see the date of the BIOS, April 10th, 2019. So that's it for this older unsupported OS. Now let's check out what some people are more interested in. If Windows doesn't screw up the bootloader, we'll see in a moment. Oh, it hasn't screwed it up this time. Sometimes when booting up Windows, it sets the Windows Boot Manager as default, so I can no longer boot other operating systems. This time it doesn't seem to have done that. Let's see if we can boot up Windows 11. Of course, this computer is too old to support it officially, but I installed it anyway as a test, and that's also why it's installed on the slower hard drive. Besides the reason it's only 128GB SSD, and I can't fit 4 operating systems on it. In case you didn't know, you can use Rufus to set up a Windows 11 installation USB drive that works on unsupported PCs. But I do not recommend it because even though it seems to work fine now, it gets security updates and stuff, I'm sure there will be problems when the next build of Windows 11 comes out. I'm not sure how they're gonna call it, maybe 22H1, something like that. But maybe when that one comes out, there will be problems with computers that are not supported officially. Perhaps you can do workarounds just like installing Windows 11 now, but having to do that for every Windows 11 build that comes out every year or so, it's gonna be a pain. And why is the desktop not coming up? Let's finish setting up your device. I'd prefer if it never reminded me, but the best choice here is remind me in 3 days, so let's pick that. And here's the Windows 11 desktop. I installed the Opera GX browser just to try it out. Didn't particularly like it. My main web browser is Firefox and secondary web browser is Microsoft Edge. I don't see any reason to use anything else, but everyone has different needs. And it has drivers for everything, including the graphics card. In fact, the Windows 10 or 11 graphics card for this NVIDIA Quadro are slightly more updated than the Windows 7 ones. It even installed NVIDIA RTX Desktop Manager, making this sound like a super high-end brand new video card, but it's not. There's the file manager showing my partitions, the ones that Windows can recognize at least. But anyway, now let's see the last operating system that I have on this computer, if Windows 11 hasn't screwed up the boot order. Oh, it hasn't screwed it up. That's amazing. Maybe the workaround I tried last time finally stuck. I'm not sure. But here we have the Open Core menu, and now we can select Macintosh HD to start up macOS. This one is also installed on the slower hard drive, so it's gonna take a while to start up. I installed the latest version of macOS that this generation of computer can officially support. macOS 10.15 Catalina, which as far as I'm concerned is basically the same as 10.14 Mojave, except without iTunes and without 32-bit app support. It's recognized as an iMac from late 2012. And I'm lucky this computer has this NVIDIA Quadro graphics card because the integrated Intel graphics of this computer are not officially supported on macOS, whereas this generation of NVIDIA Quadro graphics is. I didn't have to mess around with drivers at all. This graphics card just works out of the box. And I found an EFI Open Core folder that someone put together. It was put together by the same person who did the files for the ThinkPad T440s, which I did a video about. So there's my monitor, storage, got macOS, files partition where I store various files, Windows 11 and Windows 7 on the SSD. It doesn't see the Linux partition on the SSD. Memory, yeah, support. I'll contact Apple with help about my HP computer. Maybe we can see all partitions in disk utility. So this is the mechanical hard drive, files, Windows 11 and macOS, and this is the SSD with Windows 7 and Ubuntu 20.04. My original plan was to use iMovie on this computer. Since I found out that it's more powerful, it would have been a great idea, but I just got used to Kdenlive, so this was pretty much pointless, but I'm still satisfied that it works and I may still use iMovie sometimes. So that's it about these two HP Compaq computers. I'm really happy with them, especially the 6300. I'm not sure what I'll do with the 6000. I was thinking of using it for my older Windows XP programs as an upgrade over my 2008 HP Pavilion, but sometimes I want to use the floppy drive as well, and these two computers are too new to have floppy drive controllers. They are designed for business use, as you could see by the serial port, for example, but I don't have any serial port devices anymore. Anyway, that's it. Thank you for watching.